A Neighbor's Choice is live, and I'm your host, David Gronowski. Welcome to the program. Happy to be with you once again as we journey through learning and education, understanding the news of the headlines that we see around us in a way that is sober-minded, based on individual respect for each other and our dignity, our personal dignity that we have, made in the image of God that we are, and our neighborhoods. That's where things start. That's where the magic happens. It starts from the bottom up, not from the top down, as so much of what we hear from the old corporate media wants to keep things. Always looking for who's going to be our hero, who's going to be our God, who are we going to elect to rule the crowd. That's not going to solve the problems. We have to leave the crowd, leave the 99 and go after the one. Go after the one who stands against the crowd and make sure that they understand that God stands on the side of victims, that God stands on the side of the scapegoats. And, you know, I want to make this a program where we dive into the work of the late anthropologist Rene Girard, who was a professor at Stanford University. He was a member of the French Academy, but he was an American as well as a Frenchman, someone who was born in France but then moved to America to pursue his academic career, and put what we would call, there's a lot of folks that want to be, you know, the old saying, jack of all trades, master of none, right? And Rene Girard was someone who could unify a lot of different fields of knowledge with one big idea. But today I want to kind of hone in on something that he said that I think is extremely timely and gives us a clue as to why we should be really diving into his ideas as we build the intellectual vanguard for the future to navigate these times that we have and far beyond. And so he was a person who first had an intellectual conversion to Christianity prior to his spiritual conversion. But he converted precisely because he studied history. He was a historian, and then he studied literature, and then he studied the works of anthropology. He studied comparative mythology. He looked at different fields in philosophy, and he saw a unified theory of human behavior called mimetic theory is what he developed. And it's now become a very powerful and impactful theory. And I believe it will be the intellectual toolkit that we need to navigate the melee, the madness, and the house of mirrors that is the postmodern leftist culture that we're living in. You see, all these crazy things, the decadence, the finger pointing, the self-righteousness that we see in our culture, these things don't pop up into a vacuum. So for folks who say, oh, I'll leave the philosophy to the nerds or whatever, you do so at your own detriment. You do so at your own impoverishment, both intellectually as well as physically and spiritually, as our culture reaps the whirlwind of the whirlwind of chaos that happens when a society neglects to cultivate their mind, their soul, their spirit. And that's exactly what we're going to do on this program today. Nobody does this in mainstream media, but we're here on broadcast FM and AM, our website, aneighborschoice.com, and we're going to dive right into it. So the quote I wanted to point to that Rene Girard said is from his book, I See Satan Fall Like Lightning, which was a quote from Jesus in the Gospels. And here's Rene Girard's quote from this book. The children repeat the crimes of their fathers precisely because they believe they are morally superior to them. This false difference is already the mimetic illusion of modern individualism, which represents the greatest resistance to the mimetic truth that is reenacted again and again in human relations. The paradox is that the resistance itself brings about the reenactment. I think that's interesting, that word resistance. Isn't that exactly what the media has coined? The so-called fashionable ideology that we're all supposed to bow down and support? The resistance, right? So it's interesting that Rene Girard years ago, was prescient in his understanding of the times and his understanding precisely of the anthropology as revealed by the Gospels. Anthropology is the study of humankind, the study of how we create our culture and how we create our language and our togetherness and our meaning and our symbols, our art. And there's no better treasure trove to understand anthropology. In fact, the foundation for which the West has been able to mine so many scientific developments in various fields of knowledge is precisely the impact of Jesus in history, precisely the impact of understanding human nature as the Bible reveals to those who engage it. And I think a lot of this is engaging the text itself, because a lot of times in Christian history, you had a situation in which the text was hidden, it was hidden in a different tongue. It was hidden by institutional gatekeepers of the text, and the common man did not have access to the text in their own native tongue that they could then take home and read with their family and study and actually understand the life of Jesus. Because if you don't engage the text itself, then you're not going to be aware of the beautiful and radical challenge to systems of tyranny, systems of concealment, systems of fake news, what we would call mythology in more older times. You won't see any of that because, when you have gatekeepers in the way of you and understanding what Jesus actually did, those gatekeepers can often hamper or twist or dim or redirect the power of what Jesus was doing to unveil human nature, to unveil the way we do things. But this quote here, the children repeat the crimes of their fathers precisely because they believe they are morally superior to them. And I think that's accurate. I think that is something we need to keep in mind because it stands at the foundation of so many of the mistakes that we're making to one another. The children believe, that means the generation of our time, they believe that they're morally superior to those who've come before them. And therefore, they can create giant utopian projects with centralized government control and big, grandiose ideas that can defy human nature itself. And when we go off in search of these utopias, in search of trying to make the world a better place through force, through obeisance to the would-be masters of the world that we find in state apparatuses and their media accolades that they get, that at the end of the day, we make the same mistake of our people from the past when we think that we're better than them, when we think that the rules of human nature don't apply to us, when we think that the warning and the dangers of groupthink and using violence to get things done, well, that won't apply to us because we're more righteous, we're more enlightened than anyone that's come before us. They did bad things and we're better than that. And it's that mistake precisely that makes us repeat the same errors that we see in history. Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And it's precisely that humility that we need to have in our time to be able to navigate the world, the news, the current events that we see coming at us like a fire hose of information, a fire hose of different agendas. And we've got to be able to chew the fish and spit out the bones and understand what's true and what's right and what's good and what's beautiful, because there's so much out there that will tickle the ears. I was hearing about some of the speeches from last night. I didn't watch any of them. But, the quotes that I saw were just empty platitudes. They sound great. They sound wonderful. Let's unite, let's stay together and all these things. But then when you look at the record of war, you look at the record of bad managed trade deals and crooked bailouts and taxations and regulations and all kinds of things that are just taking advantage of the middle class and the poor particularly, you just got to say, you know what? We cannot do these mistakes. We can't keep falling into the same mistakes. We have to go for a better, higher ground. And that's what we're going to do on A Neighbor's Choice. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm David Granosky. Stay tuned for more.
Hi, I'm Wingate Newton, and I'm running for Pinellas County Commission in District 7. I've been your state representative in Tallahassee, and now I'm committed to continue fighting for you as a member of the Pinellas County Commission. My opponent, as school board chair, has been distracted from a job. The result is failing schools and a prison pipeline for kids. I will fight for our children with apprenticeship programs, training, and jobs, but I can't do it without you. Vote now by mail or at the polls on August 18th. For Wingate Newton for County Commission. Paper approved by Wingate Newton, Senior Democrat for Pinellas County Commission District 7.
Our monetary system is failing. Negative interest rates, growing debt, highly speculative market, and the dollar is being devalued by the Fed. Investing your wealth has never been more challenging. Who wants to earn just 1% interest annually in a savings account, or 0.5% with a 10-year U.S. Treasury bond, or invest in the S&P at its height and in the middle of a pandemic? Thankfully, there is another option, monetary metals. They pay interest on gold in gold with no storage costs ever. That's 2 to 4.5% annual interest on gold and silver paid out not in dollars, but in ounces and with zero vault fees. Upgrade to monetary metals today. Visit interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David.
Not ready to go to your favorite seafood restaurant? Get the highest quality fish for less delivered straight to your door by Fast Fresh Seafood. Order our fresh hog snapper, grouper, mahi, and more. They're boneless, skinless, flash frozen the same day and individually vacuum wrapped. Pick the size filet you want, the amount you want, and checkout's easy at fastfreshseafood.com. The best thing, every fish is on sale. FastFreshSeafood.com. Caught fresh for you, delivered straight to you. Stay home and stay safe.
Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider and are only available if the provider determines a prescription is appropriate. Subscription required. See website for full details and important safety information.
Hey guys, good news. The outrageously expensive little blue pill is now generic, which means you can get the prescription medication to treat ED at affordable prices. And Hims makes it extra affordable. You pay just $30 for a month's supply. And right now, get your first online doctor's visit totally free when you go to forhims.com/private. That's right, free, zero copay, no expensive appointments, no awkward face-to-face conversations to get your prescription. Hims connects you to doctors online who can evaluate you and, if appropriate, prescribe your ED medication. And a pharmacy sends it right to your door. Hims makes it affordable, private, and incredibly easy. Nobody likes dealing with ED. Now, thanks to Hims, nobody has to. And that's really good news. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, forhims.com/private. That's forhims.com/private for your free online visit. forhims.com/private.
This portion of the upcoming amazing broadcast is brought to you by the law firm of Catania & Catania, award-winning personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years.
Hello, David Gronowski here. We're soaring higher than ever before across Central Florida, across the Sunshine State, on FM and AM, and we're on a march for the truth. We're going to go station by station until we grow a network that is independent from the stupid gatekeepers on social media. They are yesterday's news. New media will arise. New social media platforms we can't even fathom are going to come out, and the truth will continue to devour all the false, cheap imitations. And that's precisely what we're talking about today. We're talking about the illusion that folks have in their self-righteous zeal to try to act like they're morally superior to generations that have come before us. And in doing that, they end up repeating the crimes of those who've come before us. And that's based on a quote by Rene Girard, the late historian and professor at Stanford, someone who understood that the Bible was the key to all knowledge. Look, I'm speaking to you from an anthropological perspective. You don't have to have any religious or theological claim here in this conversation. This is a scientific conversation, and it is scientifically demonstrable that the impact of Christianity has created a certain particular tradition in history, in particular the countries and cultures that have been steeped in Christian aesthetic and ethic the longest, that it has made a real and demonstrable impact in opening up our ability to self-critique our mistakes, to be able to self-examine our scapegoating barbarity, and try as we might to continue to subsume and to submerge our bad practices of blaming other people for our problem and of using violence and might makes right to achieve things. Try as we might to keep doing that, the infection of Christianity continues to draw down and break down our arrogance and break down our false gods, our false idols. And that's exactly what ideologies are. Ideologies are false idols, false gods, and they come in many forms and fashions. We have ideologies that tell us, well, it's the will of the people that counts. And therefore, if the will of the people say we can arrest you for 50 years for having alcohol or having a joint or whatever these things are that people want to make laws for, then that's the will of the people. We don't condemn it. The will of the people is supreme. That's a false god. If you say that or you hear someone saying that, let them know they have a false god. That's a religion. They may believe that God is not false, but that's certainly a religion at the very least, because you're saying that the will of the people is this big transcendent standard that can get you to do the most heinous and immoral things that you can imagine. Who among us would want to put somebody in a cage and lock the door because they were selling alcohol or selling caffeine? You know, Red Bull as a energy drink, these energy drinks have been linked to having heart issues because people chug these things and the heart goes crazy and whatever. They have underlying effects or whatever that are related. So, you know, you could come up with a busybody excuse and create you know how they do with this new virus thing where they have the death count every day on every newspaper, every T-shirt, everything's got this every day trying to just boom, 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 look at the fear, look at the fear, look at the fear. They don't tell you that, you know, that according to the I think it's the CDC or the cancer.gov or something, whatever the official American government website is for cancer, it says something like over 600,000 people are estimated to die from cancer. Imagine if they had that ticker going. Imagine if they had that ticker going. And imagine if, because there was a profit incentive that the government had put in place to label people dying of cancer, then someone who dies of a heart attack but also had a tumor, they'll say died of cancer, right? Because you're putting profit incentive. I'm saying imagine if cancer was treated like this new virus that is being treated, where if someone dies of various other issues but they have the virus, oh, that's the death of the virus. So instead of being over 600,000 people, which should be zero in America, it's already an atrocity. But imagine if the government politically counted cancer deaths the way they count this new virus. Then they would count anybody who has a tumor or anything, but maybe dies of something else, heart attack, right? Stroke, anything, pneumonia, all kinds of things. But they had a tumor or something. They said, okay, died of cancer, because we get a profit. We get a bigger check as a hospital, whatever. If we list the death as caused by cancer, if we find even a trace of it, you know, so we can see that number of 600,000 would even be astronomically higher. But not one death should be tolerable, right? But the question is how are we going to deal with fighting against death? Are we going to employ the means of violence like government does, where they want to shut everybody down and force people to use this medicine and not this generic drug that's cheaper? They want to force us to use this mask and not this technique. They want to force us to destroy the economy. They don't care about all the obscene amounts of death that will occur because of their stupid, one-size-fits-all, totalitarian type tactics. They don't care. All they want to care about is getting the credit where credit is most certainly not due, and that's in the hands of those clowns up in D.C. They care about getting the credit. Now, how are you going to trust an organization like government to get it right about your health when the only thing they care about is winning a popularity contest that you're about to partake in this November? So they want to win a popularity contest, and that popularity contest is mediated by an impenetrable wall of special interests. Not you, special interests. Big unions, big corporations that depend on you being regulated, taxed, and messed with for their benefit. So how are you going to expect government to tell you what you really need when it comes to your health? How are you going to rely on a popularity contest to determine what's life and death choices? It takes a lot of religious fantasy to believe that. And it takes the same error that Rene Girard makes a claim about in this quote. The children repeat the crimes of their fathers precisely because they believe they are morally superior to them. So we think we're morally superior to them because we look at the founding fathers and we hear about how they say government should not be the tyrant, that government does not give us the rights, that government is not to be the master over our lives, that we should restrain government. And we, as the children of that generation, whether we're immigrants or whatever, we're still in that system of those founders, if we're in America. We look at that wisdom about keeping government in check, about keeping government decentralized and minimized. And we think that we're morally superior to them. We think, well, that was rules that they needed. But we're morally superior. We need an FDA with billions of dollars. We need a Department of Education, a Department of Energy. We need a Department of Defense with $1 trillion budget every year to police every corner of every civil war around every village in the entire globe where there's money to be made, conveniently. We need a Department of Transportation. We need a Federal Trade Commission. We need all these labyrinthine agencies with these armies and armies of bureaucrats and armies of corruption. And we look at all of this and we say, oh no, we need it because we're fancy. We're morally superior to those folks who wanted a limited government. We can figure it out. We can have unchecked power, unchecked monopoly control over millions of people's lives. We can have control over the globe even, and we won't make a mistake. When John Quincy Adams says we go not abroad in search of monsters to destroy, we say, no thanks, John Quincy, we're smarter than you. We'll go and police the whole world, and then we'll say we're Republicans. You don't even know what a republic is if you want to police the world. You're certainly not going to get any democracy out of the Democrats. Look what they do to their own primaries. They don't allow popular elections to go in an easy way. Look what they did with Bernie Sanders. Look what they do to rig their popularity contests. It's all mythology, and it's all based on this lie that Rene Girard points out in this simple and clean quote. The children repeat the crimes of their fathers precisely because they believe they are morally superior to them. It's not that those before us are totally innocent. It's that if we don't learn what made them make their mistakes, and we don't see it in our own lives, we'll make the same mistakes over and over. Back in a moment.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040, WHP.
The Postmaster General suspending post office cutbacks and the removal of equipment and collection boxes until after the November election. Then, after widespread complaints and a warning letter the post office sent to states that the post office may not be able to deliver absentee ballots in time. House members returning from break early this week to vote on emergency funding for the Postal Service to handle the surge of ballots. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says it's written to have bipartisan support.
We wrote this bill in a way that would make it easy for them to vote for it. But I didn't put in there that it had to do certain things about the money for elections. People wanted that in, and we said, no, that we're strictly keeping this on the subject of the postal system.
Former Presidents Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton among the speakers tonight at the virtual Democratic National Convention. Stocks closing mixed today, but a bright spot for the S&P, closing at a record high and erasing those steep losses from March due to the coronavirus shutdown. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
So you have to be able to look at history with seriousness if you want to avoid the problems. You can't say, I'll leave the philosophy and the history to the experts. No, that's the mistake that we continue to make. The experts are themselves submitting their minds to false versions of history, to false ideologies, false gods that they tremble at the feet of, whether they tell you they're religious or not. They are thoroughly religious by their actions. We see it. Today we have the Democratic National Convention, which was done on Zoom. I heard it was one of the worst spectacles ever seen on television. It's just amazing to see the decline of these once special TV, Hollywood-mediated celebrity politicians just look so yesterday. And you know what? I don't judge things in that fashionable way, of something looking passé. But if there's anything that deserves to be judged that way, it's the ones who live by the fashionistas. They live by fashion. They die by fashion. They live by looking avant-garde and different and hip and cool. Remember Bill Clinton playing a saxophone, and therefore he should have the nuclear code? Give me a break. The kind of stupidity that you see when you just step back from politics and recognize that just because everybody else likes it doesn't mean you have to go along with the stupid joke. Everybody else is watching it, so you got to get into it. No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to dumb yourself down in order to enjoy these stupid scripts, these stupid storylines that they trot out by these little hacks. I mean, you look at this Bill Clinton fella who's going to speak today at the Democratic National Convention. Probably by Zoom. Maybe he'll be doing it live from Jeffrey Epstein's island. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they have internet connection down there. This is the guy, they just released photos in the Daily Mail of Bill Clinton getting a massage from one of Epstein's victims. Okay? So this is who the Democrats use as their icon of their party. The whole thing is all based on the idea that somehow smooth rhetoric, you got Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, and they use this smooth rhetoric that's so slick, it's so PR approved, it's so focus group approved, right? Every little emotional buttercup word you could ask for. But underneath it is a record of broken bones around the world. It's that, remember what Jesus said, those Pharisees, those hypocrites, which was the word for actors. That's what these folks are in power. They're actors. They know that they can convince a lot of folks who are low information to be bedazzled in their emotions, to stir up their emotions. Wow, oh my goodness, she said, let's get along. Oh my goodness. This is a woman who is shilling for an administration where her own husband, Barack Obama, ordered the execution of 16-year-old American citizens, people of color overseas. This is not someone that's squeaky clean. That's not Mickey Mouse. It's Mickey Mouse with a freaking machine gun. That's what it is. But you can't see the machine gun because it's below the camera angle, right? And it's not just the Democrats, but they are the party of hegemonic privilege in our media landscape. And so they're the designated good guys. The Republicans are the designated used car salesmen, sleazy weirdos. But the Democrats are the official, like, teacher's pet of party, of political culture. But you have a reality here. This is real life where you've got the key speaker to do their little political sophistry, their fluffy, nonsense, meaningless words, where you have a speaker like Bill Clinton, who was named in the recently revealed court documents that had been unsealed surrounding the Epstein case, in which several underage victims, children basically, pointed to Bill Clinton being on that island in which these terrible things happened. And then you have a photo come out. You have a photo come out where another victim is seen giving massages to Bill Clinton. And this is the glory. This is the glory of a party that wants to pretend to be your go-to place for your family's comfort and for the protection of victims. When is the public going to wake up to the fact that they do not really care about victims whatsoever, that they use victims as human shields to throw at any opponent who gets in the way of their vicious, sniveling, nasty, grasping, pitiful little clawing at power that they want? When are we going to recognize this and totally repudiate this false, politically correct religion that people have? It's got to start at some point. We cannot continue to allow this kind of nihilism to go unchecked. We have to be able to speak the truth, just as Jesus did. Jesus looked at the hypocrites, which is the Greek word for actors. He looked at those actors of his time who were lying through their mouths, lying on behalf of the establishment political world that they were in, covering up the status quo, covering up the victims. And he said, you are whitewashed tombs. Beautiful on the outside. Your rhetoric is beautiful. But underneath it, you're hiding dead bodies. That's exactly the system that we are battling with right now. A system in which people use soaring rhetoric to justify violence against innocent human beings around the globe. Human beings with hopes and dreams. Human beings with hope. Remember, Barack Obama wrote The Audacity of Hope. And people read that book, and these little elitist, smug people that lived a life of privilege, and they hate the money that they inherited because of the hard work of generations before them. So they're arrogant, they're entitled, they're self-righteous, and they think, well, I can vote for this person because he says the audacity of hope, and he writes it in such an eloquent way. And then this man has the audacity to end the hopes of millions of people around the world in Libya by killing them on behalf of special interests. You didn't need to do that, Barack Obama. What is the audacity of that? That's the audacity of evil. That's the audacity of selling out. That's the audacity of pretending to be an angel of light for people, but then letting hell break loose all over countries that you had to carve up on behalf of special interests. Syria, Yemen, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Libya, on and on. How audacious is that? That you would brand yourself as hope, that you would use identity politics to try to convince people that you were a messenger of peace and then sow chaos and violence, to lock people up, to sit comfortably knowing that in your own book you admit to doing cocaine, but then you slept on Alice Marie Johnson's clemency petition. This is a grandmother who was involved in cocaine trafficking in her younger years, and she had been an exemplar grandmother helping many, many women in prison. And she had this obscene, massive, basically a death sentence to die in prison. And how can a man write a book called The Audacity of Hope and tell people that he's a man of change, as he likes to say, when he's at a church, but then smoke a cigarette, admit to doing cocaine, and then go to sleep on fine linen every night that a grandmother of color, like Alice Marie Johnson's petition, goes denied, 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 denied. How many nights? For 8 years. This audacious man of hope goes to sleep on fine linen, knowing that a woman, a grandmother, cocaine, she does cocaine in her younger years, and she's got to languish in the violence of prison. Let that sink in next time you watch their stupid Netflix documentary trash. Okay? That's what you're getting with your little Hollywood nice histrionics that this garbage monopoly media wants to do. That's the reality of it. A man who brags openly about doing cocaine in college sits for 8 years. How many nights 8 years contain? Where he had, with one pen, he'd go, "You're coming home. Alice Marie Johnson, go home." But because it wasn't politically expedient for him to act, he did nothing, as he did for thousands of others. He did what the establishment wanted him to do, and that's why your little garbage, old, outdated, stinky corporate media wants to make you think he's a saint, because he was a good and faithful advocate of everything the status quo elites want. And that's why they try to rewrite history so that you don't see him killing Anwar al-Awlaki's 16-year-old American son for no reason with a drone strike with John Brennan, who is also heralded to you. Think about MSNBC. How many of those smug punks on MSNBC will tell you that they defend Muslims? And yet they have John Brennan on there all the time as an expert, as a saintly figure. They parade him around. And this is a man who orders the murder of Anwar al-Awlaki's 16-year-old American son? For what? And these people have the audacity to tell us that they care about Muslims or they care about people of color. This is a charade. This is a joke. These people are Machiavellian. That's what they are. This is the audacity of Machiavellianism. The audacity of arrogance. The audacity of hypocrisy. The audacity of whitewashed tombs, of folks thinking that they're better than their ancestors, that rules apply to those in the past, but me and my ideology, we can have full control over all this. We can print money out of thin air. Republicans can do it because Republicans are better than Democrats. I mean, that's another arrogant thing. A lot of folks say, hey, well, my team can print trillions of dollars out of thin air. How many Republicans went along with Bush's obscene debt? How many Republicans go along with Trump printing money out of thin air? And they do so, why? Because they say, well, our team will print money in a good way. No, it's wrong, right? What happened to good old-fashioned principles? Honest, just weights and measures. Honest and just weights and measures. That's what the Bible calls a standard of righteousness in a society. That kings should have honest and just weights and measures. That means that you shouldn't be able to dilute the purchasing power of other people's money by printing money out of thin air. Remember, the police were called on to George Floyd in Minnesota because he passed, allegedly, a false $20 bill. That's what the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve System does every day. See, the idea behind that you got to, have punishment for putting out a $20 bill that he was accused of, George Floyd, is that if you introduce that 20, that's diluting the purchasing power of those around you by just that little bit. And so therefore, it's kind of like a theft, right? You can't just print money. And if someone's passing a fake 20, then you have to have police come in and deal with it, right? Because that's bearing false witness. That's defrauding people. That's taken from some. But look what the Federal Reserve does. They print trillions of dollars out of thin air. Why? Because the children repeat the crimes of their fathers precisely because they believe they are morally superior to them. So we think it's okay, whether it's Trump or Obama or Clinton or whoever, to go around with this decadent printing of money. And then we wonder why people are outraged at the justice system. We wonder why people are protesting and in some cases rioting, because it is a rigged game. It is a rigged game. But it's not rigged because we have too much freedom to drink. It's rigged because we have too much tyranny, too much anarcho-tyranny from central planners. You see how it works? You see how they create this degraded system? And it's also a reflection of us, because we are the ones who go along with voting for the lesser of two evils and all this stuff, generation after generation, accruing debt, accruing over expanded government, and then we wonder when things are starting to hit the fan. Well, we know why they did. We saw it all along. A Neighbor's Choice will continue in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Wingate Newton, and I'm running for Pinellas County Commission in District 7. I've been your state representative in Tallahassee, and now I'm committed to continue fighting for you as a member of the Pinellas County Commission. My opponent, as school board chair, has been distracted from the job. The result is failing schools and a prison pipeline for kids. I will fight for our children with apprenticeship programs, training, and jobs. But I can't do it without you. Vote now by mail or at the polls on August 18th for Wingate Newton for County Commission. Paper approved by Wingate Newton, Senior Democrat for Pinellas County Commission District.
David Gronowski here. You probably know that it's good to own some gold. Well, I want to tell you about Monetary Metals, a company started by my frequent guest, Keith Weiner. The conventional way to own gold is to buy coins at high cost and hide them at home, or pay annual fees to store them in a vault where they just sit there. Monetary Metals is different. With Monetary Metals, you buy gold just above spot and then put it to work so that you're earning interest, paid out not in dollars, but in more ounces of gold. To top it off, there are 0 vault fees. So stop having your metal just sit there. Upgrade to Monetary Metals today and start earning interest on it. Upgrade at interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Baseball is back, and as always, the name of the game in baseball is to go home and be safe. Well, nobody protects all the pieces of your life like Italiano Insurance. Whether it's your home, car, life, disability, long-term care, Italiano keeps you safe. We can never predict what's going to happen in a baseball game, and we can never predict what's going to happen in life. So call the trusted agents at Italiano and make sure you're covered. Welcome back, Rays and baseball. Call Italiano at 813-877-7799 or go to ItalianoInsurance.com.
New guidelines show it's relatively safe for women with epilepsy to become pregnant, but it's recommended they avoid the seizure drug valproate since the drug can cause birth defects. For more information on these guidelines from the American Academy of Neurology and American Epilepsy Society, visit thebrainmatters.org.
Neighbor's Choice is back. You can call in at 727-587-1040. 727-587-1040. Our website, aneighborschoice.com. That's aneighborschoice.com. You can email us, hello@aneighborschoice.com, or comment online. John online says the rhetoric is consumerist ideology. He goes on to say principles and virtue have given way to the consumerist promise of happiness and living your best life. And that's very true. We have a situation in which, we have a consumerist mindset. And to top it all off, we're told that the only way we can atone, this is the interesting thing, the only way we can atone for this consumerist mindset that we all kind of recognize is to give up more of our liberty, to sacrifice more of our freedom, to sacrifice more of our medical freedom about what we can consume for health, to sacrifice more of our nutrition freedom. Kamala Harris wants to put a tax on meat, which is the most foundational thing humans need to eat, not the garbage slop and goo that they're trying to make profitable for their friends connected to government. Goopy slop, nasty, stinky slop. It's like goo that they squeeze out, these fake vegan burgers. Nasty stuff. Terrible. Repulsive. What that probably does to your intestines and stuff. Absolutely the sick. And these folks just want to push this Soylent Green trash into our bodies and get rid of meat, which we've been eating, which is the foundation for good nutrition. So what they do is they say, you're consumeristic, and therefore you need to atone. And you say, okay, what should we atone for? Tell us, Bill Clinton, ye who goes to great sages like Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein for your political ideologies, your values. Tell us tonight at this stupid Zoom town hall brought to you by CNN and Lockheed Martin, whoever else makes money off of this crap. And you say, hey, tell us, oh guru, how should we then live? And this fella, looks at you like a mark and he says, okay, well, give me more power. Here's what we need. We need you to sacrifice your medical freedom, your nutritional freedom. We need you to sacrifice your ability to start a job. We're going to have higher regulations, more control over what you can do in your business. We need you to sacrifice your freedom of worship. We're going to tell you when to worship and how far apart you have to be and when you can open up. We're going to sacrifice your right to self-defense. We're going to sacrifice your right to speech. We're going to sacrifice your right to your property. We're going to sacrifice the right to your fruits of your labor. We're going to sacrifice all this more. And then and only then, maybe you'll atone a little bit for your consumerism. That's the kind of situation that we see from these false prophets in the service of false gods that we call ideology. Just sacrifice a little bit more to us, and then you'll atone for your consumerism. Just sacrifice your soul to nihilism, and then somehow that will make you atone for your consumerism. Just give us more power. Just bow down to us, and you'll have the kingdoms of the world. Now, why in the world would you give that voice an ounce of more power? You live in a situation in which you have a tremendous privilege that much of human history did not. in which, because of the infection of Christianity, you have individual freedoms, the right to speak, the right to have your property not taken by bandits, the right to worship without having your church burned down by a bunch of thugs and government, the right to own a piece of land, the right to do what you want on that land, the right to associate with whom you want, the right to use your creativity and your ingenuity to come up with innovations to make the world a little better and to serve your fellow neighbor. You have those things, and you have the right to even strike down bad laws in your participation in juries. That's the way our system was designed by the founders. You have all of these privileges that in some ways are not privileges. They are gifts from God, but they are privileges in comparison to what ancient communities have had for thousands and thousands of years. And you can throw them away because you want to vote for the lesser of two evils and accrue more debt, more militarism around the world, more decadence, more foreign aid, borrowing against your children's future to give money to foreign countries that are filthy rich. It's ridiculous. It's so pathetic. You don't have to compromise with that stuff. You don't have to get into that. In fact, that's the only way you can have any sane choice in the matter, is to just say no. Just say no to it all. As for me and my house, we'll say no. You have that freedom in your hands. I don't really care who you vote for, but I care about you becoming aware of what this system is doing to grind up our freedoms, to sacrifice our liberties, to sacrifice our future for our children for quick expediency from fools like Barack Obama, who used the audacity of hope to make audacious military strikes against innocent people for no reason other than that's what the status quo told him to do, and he went along because he wanted his Netflix deal. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world, including $1 million Netflix deals, and lose your soul in the process? Well, we see it. It's not much, though. That's a consolation prize because we have something better to look forward to. We have bigger sights ahead of us, bigger visions than the lies of yesterday's politicians. Those false idols, they're collapsing under the weight of their own lies. And you and I have the opportunity to build the future that we want. To recognize the truth that the children repeat the crimes of their fathers precisely because they believe they are morally superior to them. That's Rene Girard. We should look into him. We should study these folks that come from our past and learn what it means when Jesus says that God desires mercy, not sacrifice. I'm David Gronowski, Godspeed.